Welcome everybody to attending the live session here and also those watching the webinar recording of Leading Courageous Transformations from the Inside Out. This webinar is brought to you by Oxford Leadership. We are global leadership consultants and coaches that have been unleashing purpose-driven performance in individuals, teams, and organizations since 2005. We specialize in strategy execution, leadership development, and culture transformation from the inside out. Our mission is to guide corporations and leaders through the complexities of change and accelerate their performance by aligning people, purpose, and strategy. Our flagship SML self-managing leadership program has transformed the personal and professional lives of over 1 million people, and you could be the next. This webinar is interactive. It is all about your questions. We love to hear from you in the chat, and those who are watching the recording, please use the comment function and engage with us that way. We do our best to get back to everybody. And now I would like to ask our audience, where are you all joining us from today? And what brought you here? What do you want to learn or have as takeaways from this webinar? Please share with us. And of course, ask us any questions that you brought with you or that arise within this webinar. And the same applies for those watching the recording. And now I welcome our esteemed speaker and senior partner here at Oxford Leadership, Mr. Kyle Hermans. Kyle's purpose is to encourage the future. His mission is to activate 1 billion moments of courage. He has collectively facilitated, advised, coached, and trained over 2,500 sessions with senior leaders of 300 of the Fortune 1000 companies and hundreds more SMEs and startups all around the world. Kyle is a father of 4. He is a performing and recording musician. That's right. And an endurance athlete. And beyond that, he leads one of the world's largest ongoing academic studies on courage in line with his mission to help as many people as possible to step into their moments of courage. In short, Kyle is the perfect person to speak with us today about leading courageous transformations. And now, Kyle, the floor is yours. And as a final reminder for our audience here, use that chat and comment function. Thank you guys for engaging. Kyle, please.
Thank you so much, Jonas. Welcome, everybody. It is just such an honor and a privilege to be here. Isn't this phenomenal, the age and time that we live in, that we can come together with such an incredible community? I see there's 77 people here. Looking at the chat stream from all over the world, it fills my heart. Thank you for allowing me to fulfill my purpose as a courageous leader, which is to bring moments of courage to every person in every moment that I can. So I also want to just honor you and your time. I know you've got many things that you can do with your time, being successful leaders, and you've chosen to be here. So I'm very grateful for that. And I also honor you and your commitment to your personal development in coming to communities like this so that you could hear or learn something new. And I'm very grateful to be on the stage and to have the spotlight here with Jonas. And thanks again to Jonas. Courageous leadership from the inside out. Or courageous transformation from the inside out. This is probably my meaningful work. This is like my purpose work deep down inside. As Jonas mentioned, I fell in love with the notion of courage many, many years ago after a background of helping to drive innovation into the world, in doing culture transformations. It actually even started way before, which was just bringing design concepts. I come from a background of ad agencies and design agencies. But most of this was bringing ideas from our minds, the future that we would love to see, the possibilities we'd like to see present in the world, And what does it take to make that happen? And over the decades of journeys of being in thousands and thousands of rooms and working with amazing leaders like yourself, and the role that I believe that I play, I wear a few different hats. And some of those hats are an advisory hat where someone is seeking maybe something. I have a perspective that I've been in a room or I've heard from or I've seen things, and I can be a knowledge broker and I can transfer that knowledge. I can offer advice on things that I've seen. Other hats that I wear are a facilitation hat, which is I will invite it into a room where there's a difficult transformation that has to happen, or a challenge that has to be overcome, or a breakthrough, a performance breakthrough that has to be discovered. And the team have just hit the capacity of their own thinking or their own ability to find that breakthrough because they've been so focused. And to facilitate is to offer some perspectives, some tools, some processes, and to guide a team, not being in the content, but just guiding the process to find the breakthrough that someone can own for themselves, the inside out part. And then, of course, the two other the cats that I would want to call out here are coaching, and the coaching hat, which Oxford is just so phenomenally great at, and we get to do a lot there, is the coaching part is being your accountability partner, is for us to work through and for you to discover your breakthroughs, but also to be that person for those of you that, I'm not sure if anyone likes fitness, but on those cold mornings when you have to get up and work out and you just don't want to, and you have a personal trainer saying, come on, let's get up and do this thing. A coach, I feel, often is that. In business, there's so many reasons that we could just say no or quit or stop because it's hard, and disruption is hard, and transformation is hard. And so having a coach and having somebody alongside you to work with you and process your thoughts in a safe, psychologically safe place, because as leaders, you will know better than most, is that in transformation and the old mental model of leadership, it's very, very often we cannot show our vulnerabilities. I know some of that is changing, but when you're in a room and you have to make massive strategic decisions and there's a lot of risk on the line, we don't always want to show that we might not know. And so having a coach and working as a coach is a great way to reflect those thoughts and get in our breakthroughs in our private time to be able to bring the best of our leadership. And then the consultative side of things is just being an outside in support to a team. And so as we talk today, I'm going to probably bounce around a few of those hats. And I'm sure many of you on this call wear those hats too in your business. And they require us to show up different to help guide courage and guide transformation from your inner wisdom to your outer wisdom. So I'm incredibly excited to share things with you today, our connection and partnership with Oxford Leadership, which is really driving transformation for good, working with amazing leaders like yourself. My goal today would be that there's something you learn, there's something you connect to that you can take with you. But most importantly, that you step deeper into your own leadership, and whatever transformation that you have to guide, you can do that with just that little bit more courage as a choice. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
All right. One more here. Virtual round of applause for Kyle. Kyle, thank you for opening up. And very importantly, Kyle joined Oxford Leadership about a year ago as a senior partner, and it's fantastic to have him join our team, join our company, bring together his vast experiences, again, working inside many big organizations as a senior leader, but also working with companies literally all around the world. And one thing I am very passionate about is to learn from companies in Silicon Valley, and that is where Kyle is based, and also getting his input, his inspiration from the ecosystem there, and together we bring that out into the world. I just posted into the chat. We would love for for everybody to voice their questions. And what are you most interested in when we talk about leadership, when we talk about transformations, when we talk about courage? So please use that chat. It will be monitored. And
Jonas, if I can add one thing as we kick off
yes,
together
please.
here as well, is for those of you that I've got to work with before, I see some familiar friends and faces from around the world. And hi, it's awesome to see you. And hello to all the new friends as well. I love asking the question and have this rattling around in the back of your mind is, where in your organization or in your world or in your leadership team, where do you feel like a transformation is needed and why? And where is courage needed and why? And if there's a question that you have about something you're wrestling with that you would like
Mm.
perspective on, we would love to be able to respond. I find that hearing from you allows us to contextually answer some questions in real time. And generally, everybody's question is sometimes everybody's question. So someone's going to say something here that applies to each of you. So as we go through this, we'll have a look at that. Where do you feel that courage is needed in your business or your leadership right now? Where's
Mm.
transformation needed? And what's a challenge you might be wrestling with that where transformation could be, when courage could be a strong solution, and perhaps we can offer some perspective today.
Yeah, absolutely. Kyle, before we get into the questions, actually, questions are coming in already. I'll be getting to them in a moment. The first question I would like to ask you is when we did our preparation for this call, one notion that we spoke about is the transformation from fear into courage.
Yes.
And I think we all been through the COVID-19 period, a lot of uncertainty, certainly lots of fear. Now we have in US elections coming up. There's things happening all around the world. I would love for you to share some thoughts and wisdom around that. And then we continue right there with all the amazing questions from our
Perfect.
audience.
Thank you for the question, Jonas. Courage is and I like to believe that this is a choice. If you could leave here with anything today, it's that you have another choice available to you on how to create, how to lead, how to communicate, how to design, how to shape your day-to-day, your week, your month, your year, your future. In our science and our research, and as Jonas mentioned, we have a phenomenal academic study that's been running for a while with New Sunny Pulse, New York University, under the care of Dr. Glenn Gerher and with the help of Shannon Gerher, who is professor of evolutionary studies there. And his and his amazing research team, we've been partnering with them for some time, putting out what we like to really push towards is the world's largest academic study on the characteristics and psychology of courage. What we have hands down gotten back is that courage is a choice that you can take in any moment. We actually say that courage is a verb. It's an action. How do I courage this webinar? How do I courage my meal? How do I courage my relationship? And what that means is that what we've noticed is that dominantly human beings, local, linear, wired in the hierarchy of needs into a survival mode or into just really making sure our baseline survival instincts are taken care of. That primary instinct, and I'm sure many of you have read many books about this, but we are could be very fear-ridden as a core decision-making lens in life. We might not even know it. We could be very risk adverse based on our experiences, our biases, our upbringings, our geographic locations, the leaders and mentors we've had in our lives who have all been looking to protect us. They've said, watch out, the world is incredibly scary. Be careful, watch out before you trust someone. Watch out before, you do anything that feels a little dangerous or the unknown or risk. Now, what that ends up happening in our bodies and in our decision making, in our subconscious psyche, is that we start to see that fear is one of the core lenses by which we validate, select, choose, or design our lives through. Something will come into us, it'll come through our filters, and we'll say, well, is this dangerous or not dangerous? Is this risky or not risky? And then that goes into our psychology and thinking. And that thinking has analyzed and processed every single experience we've ever gone through. And then that connects to our emotional state. Well, how did I feel about that when that happened? And then based on those responses, we then make a decision to whatever's happening outside of us. Now, I was just literally texting with an incredible executive of a leading entertainment company yesterday. We were going backwards and forwards saying the disruption in the world right now is crazy. And so she was saying, what was this quote? And in the world of technology that we get to play in, there's a quote floating around that we are going to experience in the next 10 years the same level of disruption that humanity's experienced in the last 100 years. Now, if you think about what the nature of your business for anyone that has a short, medium, and long-term plan, you could just allow your body to say, if you hear something like that, I know for me, just as a human being, and I practice courage every day, my anxiety will show up, my resistance will show up. Like, well, what does that mean? And I need to know, I have to have certainty. And fear kicks in. But there is a timeless acronym that's been in the personal development space for decades, which, and I'm sure there's many of them out there, but fear as an acronym is false evidence appearing real. And I still think it's quite a valid one, because a lot of the time for us as humans, we think about the future, or we think about a task, or we think about our day or our week or our year, month, and we'll look at that and we will project past experiences into anything new that's coming up that have similar qualities or traits. Now, if we've experienced some negativity or disruption or difficulty or hardship, and we see something that, although exciting, has similar variables to what we did experience, we will project our past fears onto that future thing before it's even happened. And what ends up happening is we start to make very serious business decisions, life decisions, leadership decisions based on those feelings and those instincts. But for so often, the future is unknown. When it comes to transforming, when we're transforming into something new, it's the unknown. It's never happened before. We don't know what we don't know, yet we have a sense that it's not going to go well. Our fear kicks in and says, but what if it's bad? What if it doesn't work out? Now, risk mitigation is incredibly important in business. But what we found is the role of courage, and circling back from it, the shift from fear to courage. And this is one of the primary transformative shifts I would invite everybody to play with and practice. It is something you have to practice, like repetitions, like a muscle. I would say give yourself 5 minutes a day to ask yourself each morning that, what am I fearing today? What are those traditional concerns that I might have? Write them down. Literally, pen to paper is one of the most powerful ways from your mind to acknowledge things and say, I fear this. I fear this happening in my business. I fear this happening in my life. I fear it might be loss or ruin or rejection or judgment or whatever those things are. What's the fear? And then look at it and say, well, is it true? Can I absolutely know for certain that that's going to happen? I would almost imagine that 99.99999% of the time, it'll be a no. And so then we ask ourselves, well, what's the courage needed there? If I could imagine that I have an abundance of courage available to me, and this is what we found, human beings have an abundance of creativity and abundance of courage inside of them. You just have to ask the question, where's the courage needed? And a response comes. And that response, those ideas and those thoughts, it's up to us to build a relationship with that and to start to activate on that. But if we say, what's the fear? Is it true? Probably not. What's the courage needed? Well, I would actually have to do this difficult thing. And what we've learned at Oxford, what we've learned in critical thinking, strategic thinking, in our courage research, is that courage is going to signal to you to do some hard things. Sometimes it's going to be do the difficult thing, not the comfortable thing or the familiar thing, but the harder thing. I would even say those are the exciting things. But courage is going to say, do the hard thing, because on the other side of the hard thing, on the other side of the thing you're fearing most, is where your breakthrough and your transformations truly going to come from, because you get to confront that fear. And as soon as you do, and start small, as soon as you do one small fearful thing and you overcome it, you'll look back and say, wow, that was nowhere near as bad as what I thought it was going to be. And then you try the next thing, and then you try the next thing, and you try the next thing, whether it's a courageous conversation, whether it's trying something new in business, whether it's asking a difficult question, whether it's sharing something creative. But the more we practice it, the more we practice it. And I have to say, with ecology, and what I mean by ecology is doing right by yourself and others, but the more you practice it, the more you're going to realize is that whenever you fear something, the best thing to do is build an immediate relationship with that thing you're fearing. Ask it to come forward and analyze it and say, well, what are you? Let me look around here. Because most of the time we avoid it. But that is the courageous thing to do. And in our research, we found a couple tenets, which is, if you want to practice courage in leadership, and I know this can sound quite large, but it's really an intentional mindset. It is a thought process. It is a decision process. It's a type of thinking. If I can get intentional, do I want to choose this fearful way, or would I like to seek an alternative way to do something? That's the choice. Well, what if I did the courageous thing? What might that be? That's intention. If you set yourself a larger sense of purpose, well, my job is to go out and deliver impact or nurture people or grow leaders or drive amazing business. But I am afraid of if things might go wrong. But what's the courage needed here? Now we're suddenly making decisions through purpose. You can look at risks and look at fear, and you can say, well, is it as risky as what I imagine it to be? Is how do I mitigate the risk and still do the courageous thing? Now what we've done is we've become a risk taker. I identify the risk, I analyze it. But if I ask what the courage is needed, I might be more inclined to take a risk, a calculated, pragmatic risk, but still, I've now become a risk taker. And so what we found is a shift from fear to courage, which is so important as a baseline in a transformative conversation, because most of the time to transform, true transformation. And I do think there's a difference between change management and transformation. I'm happy to debate with this with everybody. I know there's incredible literature, incredible authors who I've met. We often, when we meet on stages or around the world, we'll talk about this. This is just my view. It's things we're learning in our science and in our academic studies, is that change and change management is often I need to change the molecules of a system, but the fundamentals of the system stay same. I'm going to keep the same system. I want to change what's happening within the system. To me, I believe transformation is that we're creating a new system and making the old system obsolete, meaning that the shift that has to happen, I'm going to look back at myself and say who I've always been and how I've done things or how I've run my business is actually no longer serving on the highest level. And it's probably not going to be the strategies that are going to get me to this future I'm trying to transform to. So I have to make a shift. And I'm going to come up against fear, which means that I have to have the choice of courage available to me. So I'll plant the seed there, Jonas, and hand it back to you. But the shift from fear to courage and transformation, just to set that context and fundamentals, is we are wired to see things as risky because we're wired for survival. It's our human nature. We can't fight it. Fear's never going to go away. And that's a powerful instinct to have. You don't want to lose that. But what we want to make sure is that we keep it in check and that we make sure that it's not derailing us from creativity and possibilities, transformation, and powerful progression as leaders. Jonas, I'll hand it back to you. I'm sure I see the chat streams blowing up, which is great.
That was powerful. I believe yeah, a lot of people can feel that. Yeah, feeling into yourself, like what is alive in us. And so often we are being held back by these inner blocks. Sometimes I call them our inner demons, right? That stop us from going out there and doing what we really need to or want to do to pursue our purpose, to create value in the world for our companies, for our teams, our organizations. So thank you very much for sharing, Kyle. And a quick organizational explainer. I was asked if we can have only one Jonas Wolf here to not have confusion in the text, in the chat when so many people comment. I renamed everybody who is renamed Jonas Wolf to rename. So now there's a lot of renames here. And I send a small guide. So if you want, just rename yourself. And again, let's keep that chat active because we can generate a lot of value there. And one more time, sorry from my side. This is the real world. Small mix-ups and accidents happen, but we are pushing forward. Thank you for understanding.
Jonas, let's turn it into that positive, as you mentioned earlier, which is this is your first real life example of transformation. You can transform your name. If you happen to be Jonas Wolf, you can go in and click and transform your name to whatever you would like to call it today.
And
So
you
that'll
can
be our
call
first
yourself,
transformation.
yeah, you can call yourself Jim the Transformer or whatever you want. We can make it fun, add some nicknames on here. And we are going right back into the questions, guys. There's one question here that stood out for me in particular with what I would like to continue because I believe a lot of people in the trenches of working in leadership as practitioners on a daily basis, but also our other stakeholders, all the amazing coaches. And I know some of us here online are trained OCC coaches, SML coaches. It's fantastic to have you here. And as coaches, we are also being asked this question, and I just read it out. Actually, the person who ask this question, I would love for you to write your name, then I can address you with your name because it says my name on there. So the question is, I've worked with senior leaders who say they know they need to let go, but they don't follow that up with actions. So
Mm,
there's no empowerment or ownership of any change will fail. How would you
mm,
encourage them, the senior leaders, to let go? I think it's a very
mm.
relevant question for so many of us here.
Phenomenal. Thank you to ask that question. I can even feel that because letting go feels like a daily practice now. I'm just going to give a shout out to a dear friend, and author. His name is Barry O'Reilly. He has written a phenomenal book that's been translated to many languages called Unlearning or Unlearn. And if you do want a really great business book, but that's also just around for you leaders as a real body of knowledge and some great case studies, take a look at that book. I would imagine it's also translated into some of the languages for the countries I see represented here today. But let's come back to the question, and I'm going to just frame up unlearning, but I don't want to pretend to know he's the master on this one. But letting go, there's another dear colleague of ours. His name is Mark Bonchek, who's a specialist in mindset shift thinking, and he has an analogy that he shared with me many years ago. Is that he says that it changes like a trapeze. So if any of you have ever been to a circus or you've watched acrobats doing the high fly wire stuff, and it's a really powerful metaphor. It's one that's stuck with me. But it's in the context to answer this question. Then I'll give you some practical ways to do this, to let go safely. But it does require courage. Is that when you see the acrobat swinging on the bars, they're holding onto this bar. Now you can imagine that the bar metaphorically is actually your mental model. It's your way of being. It's your identity. It's your personality. It's everything you've worked so hard for in your life. It's the justifications and sacrifices of your leadership. You're holding on to this place, which is like, I am here. I have to justify who I am and my learnings and my skills and all those kinds of things. But I also know that maybe I also have to make a change. I've got to let certain things go because they don't serve, and it's becoming more and more apparent that it's older, and there's new disruptive things happening, and I have to find myself in that future. Now, if you think about those trapeze bars, as an acrobat will only let go and jump and fly through the air, which is a risky move, to grab onto the new bar when they know that it's close enough, when they know they can make the jump. But it still requires a feat of, like, as soon as they let go and they're flying, we all go, whoa, it's like, will they make it? And then they do. And it's such an exhilarating feeling. But they understand that that bar is close enough, and the jump that they're taking, although risky, they're going to make the jump. But here's the thing for human beings is, and Mark talks about this analogy, that if you're holding on to that bar and the other bar of the future is too far away and we can't make the jump, if you set fire to those ropes and you took away the safety net, we would hold on until this thing fell, if that new bar is not close enough. And so to let go, if you just think about what we're asking ourselves to do, I'm going to let go, but what's going to catch me? Well, if I've got nothing to catch me and that future's not close enough, and I don't have an identity in the new reality that I'm trying to move to, I'm not going to let go. I have the best intention, metaphorically, theoretically, mentally, I'm there. And it's the same for teams and organizations. When we do transformation, whether it's coaching an individual leader, a team, or working with an organization going through, and that's happening all around the world now, we have to bring that new reality close enough that it doesn't feel the same as what your existing system is, but close enough where you say, I can make this jump. I can let go of this old bar because I can see myself, I can find myself and find my identity in this new reality. And I want to make that jump. It's risky, but I know I can make it. And so to let go, we have to make the future bigger, brighter, bolder, more courageous than our current system. We have to find something worth fighting for. We have to find something that's purposeful, because otherwise we won't let go. Our existing systems, comforts, rituals, routines, systems are going to be, they're just going to go, no, you don't want to go. Stay here. You know this. It's familiar. It's certain. And humans crave certainty. Systems crave certainty. Operational scale, hitting your numbers every quarter, growth, it all depends on certainty. I need to know, will we make this in the next 4 months? Will we do this by the end of the year? It's all craving certainty. And so we go with familiar things. So when you say make a jump, let go and move into something I haven't done before is new, that's going to feel incredibly risky. And if it doesn't feel close enough, we will never let go. We will never let go. And that's not, doesn't mean that you're at fault. That's just human nature. So one of the pragmatic tools to let go is to spend time dreaming about who you would like to become. Thinking about your team, if do some discovery into the future. Go read some great books, or go and get some speakers, or go do some exploration, and just say, okay, if I think a year from now or 3 years from now, what are trends, what are signals, what are scenarios, what do I imagine is happening? What are the disruptions that are happening? How is that affecting my business today? And if I stay here, what's that going to look like for me for a year from now? Will the gap between where I am and what that future is it going to get bigger? Or is it not going to get bigger? When you get that self-discovery going and spending time with your team, identifying what's next, where else, and playing on the fringes of the unknown. We call it in innovation horizons. Horizon 1, about a year out. Horizon 2 is about 1 to 3 years out. Horizon 3 is 5 years plus. Horizon 4, 10 years plus. You can go and just imagine, just have the creative exercise. Where do we think this is going? What's the unresolved question we might have in the future? And who would I have to become in order to achieve that? Now, if I put this in business tangibles, this might be, I want to 3x our business. We want to double profitability. We want to grow our margins. We want to reach more customers. We want to grow geographically. We want to launch more amazing services and products. When you imagine yourself having done that in the future, you're going to also realize that you are different. You're going to have to be different than you are today to maintain that. When you can identify what that's going to be like in the future, you've just brought that bar closer. So you'll be able to let go and unlearn past practices that no longer serve, or let go of rituals and habits that are holding you back from achieving that. And you will start to rewire and reframe those towards things that you want. I love that question. Thank you very much for that. But that's about letting go. Letting go, you got to bring your future closer. You have to bring your future closer and find meaning and purpose in it. Then we are able to let go. If we can't find meaning, then our current state's going to be greater than our future state. And we want to reverse that.
And Kyle, there was the second part of the question. Thank you.
Right.
First of all, it was about how can we communicate from like a lower or mid-level leadership to the higher leadership? Like when the problem stated in the question was about when the senior leadership know that letting go needs to happen, but that control from the senior leadership is actually not being given up. So the next generation is not being empowered. Do you have suggestions about how this can be better communicated and brought across to the uppermost leadership in organizations?
Absolutely. I think I'll give you a little process for a second. I think that there's 6 key things, and I know you will be getting this recording, so you can track back through this. But for anybody, and I think we've got this notated, so you'll get this. And I'm also seeing that if we don't get to all these questions in the chat stream, one of the things that we'll commit to doing is going through some of these questions and then sending back to the community some responses, because there's some phenomenal connections and already creativity happening in the chat stream. But I want to share with you six common things that we find to cascade messaging to create a sense of empowerment, and what we like to refer to as a network effect. Like, how do we create a really good ripple effect? Sometimes cascading can even be an old mental model. I think what we're really trying to do is create a network system of empowerment, where people feel that based on the seat that they're in and the role that they're in and the decision-making rights they have, whether they're an individual contributor or are running a team, how do we ensure that they feel that they have a strong sense of decision-making authority to do what you're asking them to do? One of the big practices we've seen is sort of 3 areas. There's purpose. Well, if somebody can feel and embody the purpose, why is this change important? Why is this transformation important? We're trying to achieve this, and there's a metric against that. That helps them to anchor something on meaning. I see that some people call it a North Star, some call it a vision, some call it a mission, some purpose. But what it really is saying, we're trying to go here. We want to achieve and have this kind of impact. The second part is what we call principles, decision principles and design principles. We often operate in businesses under values, or we have competencies. which are really a sign and a signal of how we should be behaving and operating as a team. But a principle is a practice of, in principle, if I face something difficult and I'm trying to go for this change you're asking me to make, I'm going to come up against a choice. Is it this over that? Is it profit or is it our people impact? Is it doing right by the world or is it just doing right by our business? Now, we're talking about transformation for good here, so I'm using those examples. When you face a situation, giving your organization a set of shared decision principles, just know we're driving towards this. And if you don't have a leader that you can see and connect to right now, and you're facing a challenge in this vein, here's the principles that you can make your decisions by. It's this over that. It's more this than that. Those choices will be unique to your organization, but those decision principles, it's give your team some perspective on how to decide that leads them towards delivering on that purpose or that vision mission and the metrics that you've associated to it. The third part of this is then turning those into shared common practices. You could call that a playbook. Now, this is freedom in a framework. It's flexible. We're not saying, here's a disciplined set of structures and you cannot deviate from these. No, this is saying here's some agility. Again, that freedom is to say, here's a practice of how we speak with communication and clarity. Here's how we stay productive. Here's how we mitigate risk. Here's how we make tough decisions. There's a practice in that. If you can share those practices, they're guided by good decision principles and they're driven by a purpose. You're able to then empower your organization more because they can find themselves in those roles. They can find that purpose in their role. They can find meaning or authority. And it actually takes the pressure off of you as a leader to have to be the one in a hierarchical structure. I'll share this. Transformation requires us to be ambidextrous. It's a big word, but what that means is it's this and that. I have to be able to operate tactically and innovate tactically. You're asking your organization to do two things in transformation. I need you to make pragmatic, fast decisions that hit our ROI and deliver our results. But I'm also asking you to take risk and think big and think openly. And so those three things, purpose, principles, and practices, are very important. And the six things that I'll share with you in link to that is, in a transformation system, what we always look at as our principles by which to create great transformation is the first one is that people have to get excited. They've got to be excited, more excited than fearful about the changes and the transformations that are coming. Oh, I cannot wait to achieve this future together in this organization. The second piece is it has to make sense to them in their role. You could say, and I'm sure many of us on this call have been in change initiatives where it looks great on paper, but I don't understand my role in this. What does this mean for me? What does this mean for my function in my business? We have to make it mean something in the role. If it means something in the role, then what you've done is you've been able to ripple that out and given them authority of power and, to make decisions. The third is that if you don't have the skills and the resources to make that transformation happen in your role, we're not going to do it. So the third part is, how do we provide the skills, the resources, the tools, whether it's technology platforms, whether it's coaching, whether it's, mentorship, whether it's a training. How do we ensure that to get to this transformation, we're also resourcing and helping to upskill? The fourth one is that the conditions in the organization have to be psychologically safe for someone to actually make that change and to go and do, because you're asking someone to take a risk. What if one of your decisions is, look, we have to make a change, and as a leader, you can speak back to your leader and say, I disagree. I don't agree with that direction. You've asked us to communicate boldly. But if the conditions in the organization is like, I know you said that you want me to do this, but that feels really threatening to my career. I'm not going to do that. The conditions aren't there for you to even live the transformation. So how do we create psychologically safe environments? The fifth one is, the best way to make any change happen is to align it to tactical work streams. Make it about executing on strategy. We want this transformation. Here's the work. So it's not something that you go off and do in another container outside of my day job that I might try and make time for. No, it's my day-to-day work. It has to link to the work streams. And the sixth one is there has to be an ongoing energy around this. It's a communication narrative. For you as leaders, you want to keep communicating to your organization. This transformation is important. This purpose is important. Your ability to make decisions is important. We want to hear from you, and then back that up. So purpose, principles, practices, energy has to make sense, resource, psychologically safe, linked to work streams, and build ongoing narrative. But that, to me, I found it's not a perfect science or a silver bullet, but when we follow those principles, the transformation happens, ripples down through all levels of the organization. Jonas, I hand back to you.
All right. That was quite a bit. I've tried, Kyle, to keep up with the notes, but
All
while at the
right.
same time, I'm also a big fan here of pen and paper, by the way, on the side. While keeping up with the chat at the same time, it was a lot for me. So I was also asked by several people if we can send out a recording. And
Yes.
I know there's so many valuable nuggets in here. We'll make sure to send out a recording, but also like a summary of some of the key concepts, principles shared, because what our aim is here is, yes, we want to connect people, we want to build community, but we also want to empower. And that is also by sharing tools with each other. So thanks for everybody who asked, and we'll make sure to send you guys that follow-up email as well. And Kyle, beautiful sharing. Like it is quite a few steps, but at the end of the day, once we ignite that passion, that flame in people, that they say, yes, we are hungry, we want that change, right? I think even the most, if I may say that, most stubborn senior leaders who are, maybe only a year or so away from their retirement, right? If they feel that excitement, they will say, let's do it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it takes more time than we expect, but what I can add from my side is never give up, always be persistent, and reach out to the experts like Kyle. Read books, get help where needed. Get your coach on your side, and keep pushing forward, because as Kyle said, we see the transformation happening, and it won't be slowing down anytime soon. So we got to transform ourselves and our organizations.
Jonas, let me just add one other thing to what you said, which is a great reflect, and I'll share this with everybody on the call. You'll know this better than most, because all of you are the sum of many, 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 many transformations through your life. You've all been through this. You know how to do this. We just never really reflect to take stock. Like, how many transformations have I done in my life? You may have moved country. You may have changed roles. You may have started a family. You may have shifted your career. There's many transformations. We do it, but we just think that we sometimes in a survival mode, we don't actually realize how powerful we are and what we've actually already accomplished in life. And so if anyone on this call, I think one of the first ways to really lean into transformation is do a reflection on how many transformations you have actually naturally gone through yourself, and then honor yourself for that, and ask yourself, what have I learned along that? And you'll realize how much you already have inside of you, which is just so powerful, because change and transformation only comes from two places. It either something happens outside of us or it happens inside of us. And we're talking about courageous transformation from the inside out. Now, you can also, the inside means like something has to stop, something has to change. We've all had that feeling. I can't take this anymore. I'm over it. I'm done here. My boundary has been drawn. I need to make a change. Something has to change. Now, you can analyze that to, well, it was maybe things happening in the market, or things happening in your company or organization or team. There were things outside. No, this isn't going well anymore, or it's not optimizing, it's not performing on the right level. It's something outside of me has to shift. But in order to make that shift, we have to really do deep reflective searching inside and say, what is it inside me that would have to adjust and shift in order to honor that transformation? But it really just comes from two places. So if you feel like a change has to happen, ask yourself, is that signal coming from the outside or the inside? And then you'll know exactly where to start. Even micro moments, just daily improvements on a level. It's like, oh, it's an outside thing. It's like all these disruptions and AI and change and climate change and politics, whatever it is, supply chains, operating, like it's just outside. Okay, all right, I get it. So, but how am I doing inside? No, I'm pretty grounded and strong and creative, and my team are pretty strong. Great. Well, let's utilize that and then look at where we can bring the courage and transformation outside of us. If it's inside saying, I am not figuring this out, then we know that we have to go in and do some personal inside out work first. And then you'll see as soon as you work the inside, the outside starts to shift too. That's what's so important, especially for this webinar together. And again, thank you everyone for being here, is that courageous transformation from the inside out is look at where we as leaders in this community. And I saw people sharing their LinkedIn profiles to connect, and I highly recommend we all connect. I really do. Like we're all in this together. We're all in this together. But if we as leaders can step into our causality, how can I cause change? How can I cause a better outcome than what I'm seeing and do what I need to do? Draw a circle around me first and work myself into a great state. That will naturally ripple out. But if we do this collectively, the transformations are profound. They really, really are profound. And we can get deep into the details of what is happening in the business and what's the pragmatic operational thing, the risk to mitigate. But before we get into any of that, we have to just take a pause and say, am I ready for this? Have I got myself into a good place as a leader to champion and lead and guide this transformation? Jonas, I'll hand back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you. So many points here to follow up. First of all, thanks and shout out to Sean, who encourages everybody to take the SML training. Of course, we want everybody to do it because that is helping with the inner transformation. Next question here is relates to what we just discussed, is from Katarina. And what to do if the whole organization doesn't follow? We want to have it ripple up, not ripple down. And I think, Kyle, you for a big part actually just answered that about having the transformation happen inside us in our team. And then one thing Kyle and I discussed the other day was about letting the results speak for themselves, working with the metrics and proving what small transformation we can do as individuals and as teams, and let the numbers prove that and give that as a case study onward to senior leadership. But Kyle, I will let you add any thoughts and words. And last thing from my side for now, as Kyle mentioned, use this chance, drop your LinkedIn link. I'll be sharing mine and Kyle's here shortly as well. And, send that connection request. I think most of us here are very open to connect. We have been in the same room here, so we are no longer complete strangers. And then we have time for one more question. And at the very end, already can be prepared, get your hair ready, get your makeup on if you like. I invite everybody to take a fun Zoom screenshot. All right, back to Kyle for anything to be added, and then there's space for one more question.
I saw something somebody asked to your question, which I think is a build. I want to share one interesting transformative shift. Someone asked about a success story. We have many, and we'll actually do that in a follow-up and just give a couple shifts. I think that might be helpful. Is people, what I'm noticing is that the most successful way to sort of process a transformation for a company is the shift that they made. It was a shift in thinking or a shift in behavior. There was one energy company, utilities and energy company in Los Angeles, that we got a really profound breakthrough for that changed their culture. They were seeking to create more of a culture of safety. Their job was high risk. Their folk were out in the world, high risk. They had probably 11,000 people that all needed to go through this. So it was a pretty large undertaking. But what we discovered in interviews and reflections was that there was a piece when we were trying to identify the mental model of safety, or how do we get everybody to adopt and embrace a change that was necessary from legacy behaviors, was that what we discovered was inside of the safety system is that people were doing the right thing when someone else was watching. Mm-hmm. But when no one was watching, they weren't always necessarily doing the right practices. Just we were taking shortcuts, we were staying in our comfort zone, we were trying to, but when someone's watching, when we have an accountability partner, we tend to show up, right? We show up different. If suddenly a camera's on you and people watching, like, oh, now suddenly, hi, I want to be perceived as a, but but who I am when no one's watching is who we really are. and how and some of those deep fundamental things. And so what this organization we were able to discover with them was, how do we do the right thing when nobody is watching? And to me, that was a massive success story, because what that shifted in the culture was this ability for those folk to start to really hold themselves accountable and practice when no one was there, so that they wouldn't have to kind of put these personas on in these different projections when they got in front of other people. We could be our authentic selves from the inside out all the way through. And I share that as an example of a transformation, is because in this particular case, a lot of the time leadership says that you have to know all the right answers. You have to know. I can tell you something about the future, and I'm even most scared of this. Like, my own personal courage work is to be okay with not knowing, is to be okay with understanding. There's a dear friend of mine who's a professor of the School of Entrepreneurship at Berkeley, who uses two statistics that I love to reflect on, is in the next 3 to 5 years, like 50% of the skills that we will need to be using in business, we haven't yet learned. We have to unlearn 50% of all the things that we have trained ourselves on, and we're going to have to learn new things. So that means all of us have to let go and be vulnerable and say, I don't know. And we've got to go back to the start. It's not the start truly, but we have to kind of be a beginning learner. The other statistic she says is that by 2030, 87%, this is just the number that they shared, so I'm sure there's some science behind it, but 87% of the job titles that will exist by 2030 have not yet been invented, which means that the level of change and transformation and skill sets and what we're going to be needing and doing is still yet to be revealed, which means that there's so much of us that has to shift. And I bring back that example of the utilities company, because what we have to do is we've got to be comfortable saying, I don't know. I am vulnerable. Let me find somebody that does know. You can still bring your skill and acumen as a leader, and your ability to problem solve, and your ability to communicate, because all those things are deeply relevant. But sometimes we're going to find ourselves in places where we're going to say, I'm actually out of my depth. I don't know what I don't know. And this is where the courage and the real transformation comes in. Courageous transformation is like, but I am willing to go and explore and figure that out. And so that success story to me was great, which is shifting from only do things when other people are watching to be that person you want to be when no one is watching. That has more profound impact. And that completely transformed that company, because everybody became a proper servant leader in that moment, you know. So I'll pause there, flip it back to you, Jonas.
Fantastic. And I wanted to go back to a question that was asked quite early on by Keith Jong from Singapore. Keith, thank you for voicing that question. Um, However, we are pretty close to the time limit, so maybe there's like a super speedy answer.
Sure.
And
Yeah. I know I can be quite, I
we
can chat a lot.
promised to wrap up on time. We could go for at
Sure.
least another hour, and so I know we'll be asking Kyle to do another of this,
Absolutely.
mastermind sharing sessions here. Yeah, the question was around ESGs, and
Ah,
now it's a big talk. I know it's relevant for so many companies. There's big pressures, but the questions from leadership are around ROI, right? Or like fear of missing out. Like, what if we not do something? What if we, throw away $30 million with that? What are some of your thoughts around the topic and being courageous in that aspect, Kyle?
wow, that is such I feel like could almost be its own webinar, which we may want to actually consider doing, about how do
Mm.
we make real impact in the world and measure real impact, and how do we invest in that, and how do we lead into that. But I'll say the fast answer is, the very first thing I want to say is, if any of you are taking the Sustainable Development Goals or ESGs or DEIB, that's part of your mandate. Please fight to ensure that those things still stay relevant. I know that if you look at any Gartner hype cycle of any new tech or anything, there's this in the hype cycle, there's a lot of hype, and we expect it to save the world, and then when it doesn't deliver that return, the hype drops off, and then we say, oh, it was never going to work. I do think that we have made, as humans, and I'm included in this deeply, is I'm trying to undo my own past works and transform into new works, is that I think we've all made decisions to get our planet and our people into the place that it's at. And I do think that that being conscious and mindful of the world and others and our ecology and our environment is very important. Now, turning that into profitable business is incredibly hard. ESGs are how we can measure. What that's really trying to me, what I think that's trying to say is, let's come up with some standards where we make it important as a decision principle that if we're going to produce something, we do it with the most virtuous cycle impact. Now, can we find new breakthrough ways, new innovative ways to do things, to do things together? So I do think there's a bigger webinar around this. I think this is an offline question. Please, whoever asked it, let's get in touch and talk. I'm a huge proponent of bringing SDGs, ESGs, DIB into our decision making. I think what we need to do is think of life in 100-year projects. We call in those centurion projects. Think about the ripple that you make. You make a decision today. How does that, like planting a tree that other generations will enjoy the shade, we will not, they will. I think that's the deep thing that ESGs and SDGs are asking us to do, is make decisions today by which we're not going to have the short-term profitability gain for ourselves, but we can leave a lasting legacy and impact for others. That there, my friends, is transforming leaders for good and transforming the world for good. But it is a risky business, and there's not immediate ROI in it. And so I think we have to work together to figure out how do we, Richard Branson says this best, I believe it was him. He says, like, how do we make doing good good for business? And I just love that quote. And I think that the ESGs and the SDGs are part of that. So yeah, that would be my short answer, but I'd love to take that offline with you if that's helpful.
Powerful. Well, one more time, big thanks to Kyle. And guys, again,
Thank you,
let's
folks.
turn our cameras on. We'll be taking that Zoom selfie here. I'm taking us off the spotlight mode so we can get more of our beautiful faces on here. And now we have only Kyle here, and I am removing that spotlight. Guys, and again, I saw many people
Wow.
here past feedback in the chat. This is really appreciated. Make sure to stay tuned for that follow-up email with a summary and recording from my side. And again, big massive thanks for myself and our team for all of you guys showing up. And I'll be counting down 3 to 1, and then we'll be taking that selfie. There's somebody, Hanin. We can only see a black screen, so your camera is on, but likely there's like a cover in front of it. All right, we see more people coming online. All right, let us get ready and take that selfie. We need to take 2 actually. Are you ready?
Pages, yeah.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Okay, let me save that. Okay, let us take one more here. Fantastic. All right. And feel free, guys. I invite you, have a wild, funny pose, whatever you want. When you are ready, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Woo! Oh, and I see Cheryl letting those air balloons rise. We see hearts and celebrations. That is the spirit, everybody. Well, guys, this is unfortunately it for today already. Again, thank you all for being here. Sorry for the mix-up. Thank you for taking on the transformation even during this session, and stay tuned for that email. We'll also be sending you a link where you can connect to our community group and stay in touch there, ask questions, engage with us. This is the spirit of sharing, of generosity, and of coming together. Thank you one more time, guys.
Thank you, everybody. And please do connect.
Bye, everybody.